I wasn't very deliberate about my career at all. I know that I followed my heart.
Yeah.
And you know, I have a young woman that I mentor, and she's always like, oh, what should I do now? I want to be strategic. I want to get this job. And I always ask the same question. You know, is that what you really want to do? Are you doing it because it's the stepping stone to something? Is it really what you want to do? And, you know, I know not everybody has the opportunity to really do whatever they want to do, but I think decisions in life, career decisions should be made from love.
Yeah. So tell me about your organization.
So Africa No Filter is my absolute dream job. It's we're a narrative change organization, so we're trying to change the narrative about Africa, the way the world sees Africa, but increasingly for me, it's how Africans see ourselves, right? That's what we're trying to change.
Yeah.
But in order to change a narrative, you have to change the stories that feed that narrative, because narratives are built up from stories told over time.
Yeah.
And the story about Africa has been told by many different people, not us, for a very long time.
Who will help us tell the African narrative, if not the Africans themselves? And that's why today we ask ourselves, why do we have the white people talking about Africa? Why do we have those faces speaking on behalf of the Africans? Today on the show, I sit down with Moky Makura, a Nigerian-born lady who's worked in TV as a presenter, author. She's a publisher. She's worked intensively in entrepreneurship. And she speaks to us how her career has been and what it is that we need to do better as Africans to forge our own narrative. I hope you enjoy the show and I hope you get some insights. So I was asking you, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling great. You know, like you, I love what I do, and I feel like I'm blessed to be able to do it. And yeah, everything is great. It sounds, I think our default is to focus on the negative. But right now, I feel like I'm in a very positive space, and it's great.
It's great, and I'm looking at your career, Moky. Congratulations, first of all. It's not easy to be where you are at, you know. Of course, we talk about everyone's, you know, journey and their purpose in life, like we were having that conversation earlier on. So speak to me, you know, from England, from Nigeria to England and wherever. I don't know where you're up to, but how has all of that, you know, shaped your perspective in regards to telling the African narrative? Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of it has to do with where I am right now, the age and stage I'm at.
Yeah.
Because I feel I'm so much more appreciative of where I've come from. You know, I think in life you go through, you know, when you're 20s and your 30s, maybe you want to go to England, you want to do different things. By the time you get to my age, I'm happy and content of who I am.
Yeah.
And who I am is based on where I was born and the influences around me. And I was born in Nigeria. I feel I'm very Nigerian, even though Nigerians think I'm Kenyan.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm Nigerian.
Why do you think they feel you're Kenyan?
I know exactly why they think I'm Kenyan. I think a lot of it is to do with, I feel like I don't wear a lot of makeup. I don't, Nigerians.
You're not so expressive. You're not as loud.
Maybe
you're reserved a little bit. No, I'm just saying you look like you're reserved. You know, if somebody saw you. Yeah,
but also I think, you know, from a physical, they always say, oh, but I look like I'm Kenyan. You know, I'm dark, but Nigerians are dark. I'm Nigerian.
Nigerians are dark.
Lagos. I'm actually specifically from Lagos. So I don't have a village that I come from. I am from
Lagos, from
Lagos,
the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and you know, we're generations of Lagosians, because my family is one of 5 families that could rule Lagos. So my great-great-great-grandfather was Oba of Lagos. I have a pedigree in Nigeria, which is why I get very upset when people say, you're Kenyan. I'm not Kenyan.
Can you speak some pidgin? Let me hear you speak
no, don't pidgin. Test me. What thing they do you? Want to test me for my own language? I'll give it to you.
No go so let's speak about Africa, you know. Coming from Africa, Moky, you understand, you know, the representation of Africa when it comes to media. What is it that you think we are lacking as Africa? What is it that you think we still can talk about? We still have a void, you know. Is there a particular way we are supposed to tell our story?
You know, honestly, I don't think we're lacking anything at all. We're not lacking anything. I think there's still things like every country that we still need to improve on. But the point is that as we are, we're fine. And if you look at things that where Africans have been successful, like if you look at our music, if you look at Nollywood, the film industry, if you look at our food now, we're happy with where we are. You know, we're listening to our own music, right? We're watching our own films increasingly. We're wearing our own fashions.
Yes.
When we start being proud about who we are, that's when the world will recognize us. So it's not about us lacking anything, because we don't lack anything. And I think the shift now that I'm seeing is there's much more of a pride in young people being African. So I'm just saying that the shift now, it's phenomenal. And there's a lot more confidence as a result. So we're not apologetic about being African. I don't walk into a room and expect and apologize at all. I walk into a room, I'm proudly African because I have a lot to offer. And my voice is important to be in the room. You know, they always talk about diversity, but really they want a black person who really maybe kind of thinks like them. No, it's important to know that I think like a Nigerian, because I'm Nigerian first and foremost. Yeah.
And you understand your culture, and you're there to share your perspective about that. Great to see. And then tell me about where we are at as a continent, and you know, perhaps your dreams for the future of Africa, because I understand you run an African organization. And just before we come to that, I would like to hear, you know, about what is it that you envision Africa to be like?
You know, I think there is power in the collective. I think as a continent of over 1 billion people, we are far more powerful than a country like Namibia or Botswana of like 2 million people. You know, if you look at big countries that have influence, it's usually because of their numbers. America, China, India. As a continent, we have that number, right? So I feel that we need to be more connected. You know, how much does a Kenyan really know about a Nigerian, know about a Gambian, Mauritanian? You know, I use the example of, you know, a couple of years ago, not this last AFCON, but I think one before. Ghana got knocked out by the Comores. Ghanaians were on social media saying, Comores, is that in Africa? You know, we don't even know the countries that make up the continent, right? And I'm not blaming us, because, you know, the media we've been exposed to is the same media that Europeans are exposed to about Africa. So if you're sitting in Kenya, you're reading exactly the same story about Nigeria or about South Africa as somebody sitting in Europe, in Germany. So where are we supposed to connect? You know, people connect through stories, through, you know, profile pieces. So I know you, I know. It's not through hard news. It's not about hearing about the elections in Kenya or in South Africa or Nigeria. And I keep using those three countries because when we've done research, African Affairs has done a lot of research, and we found that actually a lot of stories, when they say they cover Africa, it's really those three countries. There's more than, it's England, I mean, it's South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya that gets covered because they're the big markets, right? And, you know, Mauritius, for example, it's a country in Africa. But you know, it's one of the, on all the indices for doing business, it's one of the best places. Botswana, calm. There's money there, you know, but we don't hear about that, you know. So I feel that there's a lot more to do in terms of connecting us as Africans. Intra-Africa travel. Can you even just get up and just go from, I don't know, Gambia to, I don't know, Sudan or you know, it's difficult for us as Africans to travel in Africa.
Your billionaire was actually complaining, you know, a couple of weeks ago about him needing the visas, and not just him. I mean, any other African would need visas to travel through Africa. So just proceed before I cut you off.
No. I was just saying that's an issue. And, you know, another piece of research we did was about young people and whether they felt there was one Africa, whether they felt connected. A lot of them said yes, but, you know, they feel it's expensive traveling in Africa. You know, young Africans are saying that they want to be able to travel more, but they see traveling within Africa as expensive. So and like I said, the only way you can, you know, get a relationship is if you understand people, right? So the stories that we should be sharing about each other should be much more human interest stories, you know, stories of inspiration, but about ourselves. Why are we reading about stories of inspiration from the US or from America? I mean, or from Europe? I feel that we need to do more about connecting ourselves. That's the vision that I have for Africa, a connected continent. And in fact, our story agency, Bird, the tagline for Bird, which is a story agency, it's like it's like AFP or Reuters. It's content that connects the continent. That's our tagline.
That is a beautiful
content
tagline.
That connects the continent.
Let's speak about, you know, our past. How can we also, Moky, move forward without erasing our past? because we have such a beautiful past, not to get it wrong. I mean, there's the bit about, of course, colonization, but then there's bits of history that I'm scared we may lose as Africans, you know, with all the civilization and all, you know, looking cool as your daughter thought it is. You know, how can we ensure that, yes, we are moving forward, yes, we are looking towards the future and the development and, you know, keeping all these countries together, but also how do we ensure that we are still, you know, keeping our cultures and our history?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we learn our history.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, I went to school in the UK from the age of 9.
Yeah.
I know so much about British history. I know about the Second World War, right? Okay, it was a world war, but it wasn't necessarily our war. And, you know, right now I am doing a personal project where my aunt, my father's sister, she died in Paris, but she was caught up in the Second World War in Europe. She was in Paris, she got put in an internment camp in Paris. This Nigerian woman in the 1940s. And all I know, I've been trying to find out what Paris was like, what England was like in the 1940s. And do you know what I'm looking at? Old newspapers. And I think if we don't
still available.
They're still available. They've been, you know, I don't know, digitized. So you can still find, you know, old newspapers, old articles from the 40s, 50s that reflect society at the time. And that's why I think the media right now has a role, because in 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time, the stuff that's being written today is our history, right? It is our history.
Yeah.
Because where else do you find out what's happening in any society in any day? It's what was written at the time. So it's up to us to document the past, but to document the present, but make sure that that documentation represents society. And that's why we feel so strongly about this one-sided story they tell about Africa, as if we're just all corrupt, we're all we're just fighting all the time, and that there's no progress.
Yes.
There is progress. It's like we don't have any fun. I mean, I feel that there's so much we can do to focus on the other things that happen here, because there are too many people focusing on this negative side.
Yes. And how can we, as Africans now, change the narrative? Because as you talk about it, there are people who out there, you know, sorry to say, but the global media, who still perceive Africa as, you know, full of hunger, people are starving, you know, and that is the, you know, the image. Even, sorry to say, there are white people who've never traveled to Africa, but they are scared to travel to Africa because of the image they get about Africa, which in most of the case is just not true. So how do we, you know, take charge, you know, of everything that is going on?
But it's about stories, because, you know, people, you know, the challenge with stories is that they're so powerful, and that's good, because stories influence and shape how we see the world.
Yeah.
You know, I think about how I know about America being a superpower. It wasn't because I went to the Pentagon and opened some documents and saw how much they spend on, you know, on defense.
Yeah.
I watched Top Gun. Right? I watched films. I watched Hollywood films. That's how it influenced me that, you know what, America's a superpower. So storytelling is powerful. Films are powerful. You know, culture, pop culture is so influential. What kids are saying on social media is important. We have to be in those spaces. We have to be in those places. We have to be making films that people watch on Africa. Why must they watch only Hollywood? Luckily now we've got Nollywood. We've got, you know, I think there's one in Kenya as well. I don't know what it's called, your Kennywood or whatever. But we're making our own content increasingly. And that's because there's a young generation who don't know they can't.
True.
You know, like I was saying that, you know, you can now film with your cell phone.
With your mobile phone. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And now we don't even have to wait for Hollywood. We can put it on YouTube. You know, we're so much more independent. We're not so dependent on other people. And that's what I mean, that we have the agency, but there are people who think that we don't have agency. And there's change, there's progress, and I can see it. I can see it every day. But if we keep focusing on the people who are leaving the continent, migrants who are going to maybe Europe or going to Canada or America, it's a small percentage. It's a small percentage. The bulk of Africans are in Africa. And what are they doing? That's what we want to know.
That's a good question. What are they doing? That's what we want to know. That means journalists need to tell these stories. People need to tell these stories. Speaking about that, Moky, you've been a TV presenter. Yeah, I wish you can go back to TV.
I actually, some of the best fun I had was a series I did, you know, it was called Living It. It was the best fun I had, traveling around Africa, meeting wealthy people, trying to present a different image of Africa. It was great.
Do you miss TV?
I don't miss the makeup.
I wouldn't either.
I don't miss the makeup. But I do, you know, I missed, you know, the series that I did. I've been on television,
Yeah.
but I feel that there's a younger generation now. You know, I feel that what I want to do now is what I'm doing, which is enabling young people. We give out grants, we support creatives, you know, that gives me joy now. You know, if somebody came and said, do you want to be on television still? I probably wouldn't say no, but it's not my priority.
It's not what you're looking forward to. Anyways, you've been on TV, you're an author. Congratulations. I wish you gave me a piece of your book. I love gifts. Anyway, that on the side. You've been an author and now an entrepreneur, you know, but I still believe all of this that you're doing are sort of intertwined. But how did you make the shift?
You know, I wasn't very deliberate about my career at all. I know that I followed my heart.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have a young woman that I mentor, and she's always like, oh, what should I do now? I want to be strategic. I want to get this job. And I always ask the same question, you know, is that what you really want to do? Are you doing it because it's the stepping stone to something? Is it really what you want to do? And, you know, I know not everybody has the opportunity to really do whatever they want to do, but I think decisions in life, career decisions should be made from love as opposed to from fear. As in, you don't stay in a job because you fear that you may not get another job. Rather, go out there and look for something, work for less, but find something that moves you.
Yeah.
And I think I've been lucky enough or stupid enough to just be able to do that, but I've always landed on my feet. I've always landed on my feet. And that's why I trust the process. I trust the process because I'm living proof that I didn't have a career plan. I didn't. I just went from this to this to this to this.
And it worked.
It worked.
Yeah. So tell me about your organization.
So Africa No Filter is my absolute dream job. It's we're a narrative change organization. So we're trying to change the narrative about Africa, the way the world sees Africa, but increasingly for me, it's how Africans see ourselves, right? That's what we're trying to change.
Yeah.
But in order to change a narrative, you have to change the stories that feed that narrative, because narratives are built up from stories told over time.
Yeah.
And the story about Africa has been told by many different people, not us, for a very long time. So to change that narrative, we are working with storytellers to put out more positive stories. And what we ask for is that we want better stories, and we want stories to be told better. And by better stories and stories told better.
Yeah.
So better stories are, I want more profile pieces on Africans doing great things, or just, you know, there's so many people doing things. Like, you know, this is what I said earlier on.
Yeah.
What are people doing in Africa? What do they wake up and do? I want to hear more of those. For me, those are better stories than the ones that we currently have.
Yeah.
But I also understand we're not a PR campaign for Africa, right? So I know they're challenging times. There are many young people who say they don't have jobs. I mean, I'm not making out that everybody's happy, everything is perfect.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if you're going to tell those negative stories, if you're going to tell the story, there's a conflict here, there's election violence here, how are you telling that story? Are you making the election violence, the conflict, the hero of your story, or are you giving it context? And that's what we ask for. We ask for context and nuance so that people can understand that the election violence is happening here, but actually the rest of the country went well. Elections went well.
Yeah.
The democratic process.
Yeah.
We didn't fight to get people into
power.
Yeah. You know, so I think there's so much more we can do with the way stories are told. We can tell them in a better way, and that for me is important. But for me, actually, and this is what the Bird Story Agency is all about, just tell better stories. There are 1,001 stories, and we're only telling like 5 or 6, the same ones. The same ones about corruption, conflict, poverty, disease.
Yeah, you're right.
You know?
Yeah.
What about innovation? What about creativity? What about young people? Continent of 77% are under the age of 25.
Very young people.
Yeah. And you know, that is the age when young people are the most creative. When people are the most creative. You know, I used to work for the Gates Foundation. I always remember Bill saying that he could not have started Microsoft when he was older, because that creativity and that ability to think like that, and
just ceases to exist at some point.
Yeah, because you know, you get bogged down by life. Whereas when you're younger, you don't even know that you can't do something. You don't know that you can't do it. Everything is possible. Yeah. And we've really got to tap into that can do, you know, and we have so many people who have that sense of youth. They don't know they can't do it. We must get them before they cross into that you know.
True.
We really must. I'm excited about just the fact that we're a young continent. I think young people have an energy, and I love that energy because, like I said, anything is possible.
Anything is possible. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, the challenges you've faced over time while you're trying to, you know, purpose to tell African stories, you know, for the continent. Yeah. What challenges have you faced so far?
I mean, look, I've been, like I said, I've been very blessed. I've been very lucky because this organization is well funded. We've got money from philanthropies, American philanthropies, to do the work we're doing. You know, but I know that I've been actually doing this work on my own without a salary, you know, trying to tell stories. The book I wrote, Africa's Greatest Entrepreneurs, nobody was paying me to do that. I just had this mission in my head. So there have been many challenges along the way. But for me, it's part of a learning process. Challenges like, you know, I started writing. I didn't have a publisher. And in those days, you couldn't just publish your own book. Like, you know, you can do everything. Like, it's so much more independent now. Even the series that I did, Living It, which was about lifestyles of wealthy Africans, because I wanted to show on television, because at the time we didn't have like different images, you know, like on television. It was always the same image of Africans with our flies on our faces. I remember writing that proposal and changing my age. You know, it took probably about 4 or 5 years, but you know, I never gave up. I believed in the project, and sometimes, you know, I think we're a bit impatient sometimes, but, you know, challenge comes with time as well. You know, that just the challenge of time. It took me 5 years to do the series, to get it commissioned and get the funding to do it. I mean, you know, but I just see those things as part of the journey.
Why do you have the American philanthropists, you know, on board?
Because that's where the money is. And I think there's a culture of giving that's very different to giving in Africa. Philanthropists in Africa, they tend to give, because I guess maybe, I mean, I don't know what the reasons are, but they tend to give.
Because they want something back, you think?
We're still in the growing phase. Whereas, you know, America's generational wealth. I mean, Ford Foundation has been around for years, been doing this work for a long time. You know, like I said, I used to work for the Gates Foundation, but there's a culture of philanthropy there. And there's a tax incentive as well, right? In Africa, you know, so the few philanthropists that we have, in the big sense of philanthropy, are doing very specific things that are linked to their businesses still, right? But philanthropy is everywhere. It's not just about money. And I think that's something that I want to change, you know, that, you know, you do philanthropy in your way. You know, they talk about the black tax in South Africa, which is when young people...
We also have black tax in Kenya. I don't know if it's there in Nigeria.
Black tax is a black thing, right? But I'm just saying in South Africa they call it the black tax, because that's a kind of philanthropy, because it's that sense of taking something that's your own and extending it to other people. So, you know, my funders in America, they give cash. They may not give in kind, but they give me money. And there's a culture of doing that over years. And I think the real reason why Africa No Filter gets funded is because for years they've been putting money into Africa to fix some of our challenges. And for years, the stories coming out is that nothing is working. And hopefully the work that I do is showing that actually, you know what, Ford Foundation, you know, Mellon Foundation, the Hilton Foundation, the work that you're supporting in Africa is changing the continent. Things are getting better. And I know maybe that's why they fund me. But look, I don't care where I get my money from. My work is to change the narrative about Africa. I'm very focused on that. And it's great that I have American philanthropists who are helping me do that. But that's...
I mean, the reason why I asked why America is also because of, you know, the fact that, you know, sometimes we are really controlled by where to take, you know, our energy, you know, our creativity. And especially, I'm not sure when you are last in Nigeria, but you'll find that if it's creativity, you know, there are these organizations that are talking about, oh, you need to do films in, you know, peace and conflict, you know, climate change. And so it makes someone not follow their path as opposed to, oh, I need to do something within this field for me to be able to get funding. I know you understand what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, look, I think it's not either or. You know, I think for every passion project you have, or you want to make films about whatever, you have to have a revenue source, right? If you can make films about climate, but you can instill your voice into it and instill your creativity into it, great. But you're right, money from America comes out in programmatic areas. You know, it's on climate, gender, you know. We're doing, Africa No Filter does projects like that. We've done climate project, we've done we're doing a gender project, and we're doing other projects around, because we have a certain skill set that allows us to apply it to other organizations and their goals. But the core of what we do is changing the narrative about Africa. But we have to be sustainable. Can't say no to money. So, you know, we do programmatic stuff, but we do it the way we do it, right? So we still bring our creativity.
Besides storytelling, do you have any other, you know, focus that you're, you know, pursuing with African Unfiltered?
I mean, look, I think the two things we do really are community building. So we're trying to build a community of people storytellers, creatives who feel the same way, who want to change the way the world views Africa. So a big part of what we do is community building, because we can't focus on the grant making because we don't have enough money. We can't give every filmmaker, every photographer, every journalist money. So we're trying to support them in other ways. So connect them to markets and to opportunities, to build their skill set. So there's a whole body of work around building a community. And the second thing we do is advocacy, right? Which is just trying to advocate for better representation. So we want to be that watchdog. We want to be the ones that says, no, that's not good enough. And we just last week or 2 weeks ago, we launched something called the Global Media Index, which was where we ranked 20 outlets, global media outlets, on how they cover Africa. So we looked at, for example, what kinds of stories they were writing, what are the topics in their stories? Was it just conflicts, corruption, or were they writing about creativity and innovation in the entertainment business? We looked at how many countries they covered, again, to the point that when they cover Africa, there's 54 countries, it's not 3.
Not just few.
Yeah, and then we also looked at who was quoted in the stories, who were the primary sources quoted, and you'll be surprised to learn that actually in a lot of stories in global media about Africa, Africans are not the expert voices. It's usually white males that are being quoted. They're the expert voices on Africa a lot of the time in these. And the last thing we, I can't remember the last thing, but there were 4 indicators. At the top was The Guardian in the UK. Deutsche Welle was on the list somewhere. But at the bottom was Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and New York Times, the Americans.
Both Americans, Tell me a little bit about yourself, Moky. What have you been up to besides your daughter and everything?
Well, look, you know, I spend a lot of time, I think, traveling. And so I've gotten to see a lot of the world. And the more I see the world, the more I realize we're blessed in Africa. I've just moved from South Africa to the UK. And oh my God.
So besides moving from Nigeria to the UK, you moved from the UK to South Africa. And now back to the UK, despite that bad weather.
I know, the bad weather. And just little things like lifestyle. I feel that in a way, we have so much more freedom in Africa, I feel.
Absolutely. So much freedom, good weather, good people.
I do.
You know,
I do. And so much more joy, I think. You know, just, you know, maybe because things aren't perfect, we just laugh more. There's more sense of community. There's more family. If I go back, there's something to go to. There's this aunt. Whereas in England, we live in very siloed communities. So I miss. You know, I go back. I mean, you asked me. You said you didn't know when I was in Nigeria. I was in Nigeria in January this year. It's home. It's home. So I make a point. I may not live there, and I haven't lived there for a long time. But that's actually the best way to enjoy Nigeria. Just pop in and out.
Just pop in and out.
Always have a connection. But also, there's such a big Nigerian diaspora in London. There's more Nigerians.
Absolutely.
Go to Peckham. You hear them speaking Yoruba on their phone.
Yes, I agree.
So you don't even have to. Nigeria is actually here. It's not a physical space sometimes.
It's a feeling inside.
It's a feeling. Yeah. And you can have it wherever.
Thanks so much, Moky, for your time.
Thank you.
I wish you could speak and speak. I told you 30 minutes is quite a short time.
It's been good.
And you can see from your end, you have a wealth of experience and, you know, information to share. And so I hope we can catch up again, you know, to continue the conversation, but more specifically, to tell the African stories.
Thank you.
Many thanks for watching the show today. Make sure you join me again next Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Kenyan time, only on KTN News. And if you have a story you'd like to share with us, please don't hesitate. Write to us through Globe Traktion at standardmedia.co.ke or DM us on our social media platforms at Globe Traktion or at KTN News KE. You can also tap that follow button to me on my social media platforms at Persil, Telewa, on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube for more behind the scenes. But until then, I hope to catch up with you soon, same time, same place, and let's continue doing the African narrative. Bye-bye for now.